until 9 o'clock, I'm allowed not to pick up the phone should anyone call.
Mm.
You know, this new way of communicating via video links or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
I wasn't very positive about that 1.5 years ago, you know. Also, before that, we used a lot, or anyway, sometimes we used telephone conferences.
Yeah.
But still, the problem with not being in the same room with people when you are discussing things with them or meeting with them is that you don't see, I mean, you can't look them in their eyes, you know, for one thing.
and that's
sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah. But when you have video conference and look someone in the eye, should you look in the camera or should you look on the screen? Is it for you or is it for the other person?
Yeah, well, I'm looking in your eyes right now, but that's on that's on the screen. Well, anyway, I give in. I find video conferences very useful, and it opens up a whole lot of new ways of cooperating with people, and it is certainly is not anything hampering globalization, because I mean you can be anywhere now. There isn't that much difference. No. For instance, of being in the room next door or being 1,000 kilometers away.
Doing video conference, if you're doing it from the next door or around the world, that's not much big of a difference. But if you're in the same room, there are, I look at it as being a few senses that have been removed. And the question is, how many senses do you want to remove when you go from physical meeting to online meeting or to just a phone call to email? So then it's just more and more things that you remove from the conversation or the interaction.
I mean, you know, if one of the participants is farting all the time, you know, it isn't that big a loss that removing the smell, is it?
I don't feel that usually is a problem, but yeah, of course, if someone smells garlic after the lunch, then you won't have that. And yeah, if someone is sneezing all the time, then doing it on video isn't that harmful.
Yeah. But you and I have been working together now for the whole of the corona pandemic via video, and you haven't been at the office for 6 or 7 months now.
Exactly.
Or is it even more than that?
Yeah, in September.
And one thing that I was afraid of, because, well, people don't know, but at the office, we're sitting opposite each other.
Yeah.
And very frequently, you know, if you have something you want to discuss or get some input to, you look up, you know, and you get the other blokes, I mean, yours attention, and then I ask a question or I state an opinion or whatever it is, you know, and I get some feedback. And you can do that on a spontaneous way or level when you are in the same room. And I was thinking that will go away when you're using video conferencing. But I have noticed that sometimes we call each other via Teams 10, 15 times a day, at least, you know, just to use 2 minutes, you know, and then hang up again, and then 15 minutes later, a new call.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure we lost that much, actually.
No, there is one little detail in that I actually have thought about. And it's correct, as you say, that since we are both sitting with our desk and coding or doing some work, we know that the other person is there, so we can just call up using Teams to ask a question. But when we're sitting in the desktop, you mentioned it, you look at the other person and wait for their attention, and then you speak. Right now, even though it's not devastating, the call could be somewhat interruptive. And of course, you can interrupt in the office as well by demanding attention. But yeah, it's a very fine grind difference because I don't see what you're doing. You might be away having a cup of coffee or something else, and you don't see if I'm at the place. But that in those cases, it doesn't matter because I call you back when I get back to the desk.
Yeah.
So
no, one issue here is that there might be things that people are talking about elsewhere in the room that actually has your interest in some way.
Yeah.
And you don't hear that because you have to call this person, and you're not online with everybody, all the co-workers, all the day. No. But of course you could be.
Yeah. But that's the advantage of having everyone work from a distance, because then that conversation ends up in some other communication channel. In our case, usually emails, but in other companies or groups, it's on Slack, or some use Teams regularly. Charlotte wants us to post everything on T-Rex, which is our kind of CRM system, but that's not so conversational in that sense. That's more like registering what we're doing, but otherwise conversations happen more if you go into Teams. There's these chats, but we never got the time to actually structure those chats in a good way. So that there you might have a lot of that conversation going on, but otherwise you're right. If you're all in the office and I'm from home and you start talking about something, I won't hear that.
No. And I mean, it could be like two people are discussing one topic, and then you just hear it, and say, oh, by the way, you should read these paper articles, something like that, which is discussing this from another angle. Sometimes you get into a discussion. Sometimes you get new ideas, or you evolve new ideas.
Yeah.
In a spontaneous way, which is more difficult on this video conference platform.
Yeah.
But still, I think it's not so bad. Still, it comes out better than I thought it would be.
Yeah, and we have also had another policy that has helped in that regard, and that is our almost daily meeting at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because if someone has talked about something in another context and it might be relevant, or someone might have feedback on it, then we could have brought it up at 11 o'clock and had a broader conversation. And that also works because we're a small team.
Oh, yeah.
If we would have been twice the size or 10 times the size, then I'm not sure if that would have been the same experience.
Oh, I don't think so either. No. There is a limit for how many. Have you tried to be on these big, huge meetings where you have about 20 participants and like that? Yeah. They're all small icons, and that's something else.
Yeah, everyone has to mute except the one who's speaking, and yeah, that's more of a presentation style meeting.
Yeah, exactly. We also, in the in the data access launch event here in the spring about DataFX 2020, there was this peculiar conference tool, whatever we call it, you know, where you could actually a bunch of people was in the same virtual space represented with an icon. And if you were standing close to the icon representation of that person, you could hear what that guy was saying.
Yeah.
But the rest would be mumbling, so you have to mingle around, you know, to find out what people was actually saying. There were some problems with it, technical problems, but it might be a good idea actually to have meetings that way, informal meetings that way. So everybody has to sit at home with his glass of champagne or whatever it is. It's got to.
Yeah. They had the advantage that you could move around and because often if you're in this large meeting and listening to one person speaking, you cannot have a like silent conversation with your neighbor about the topic or get some additional feedback from someone else. And yeah, of course you have the chat functionality, so you can always write in the chat with someone. But if you don't really know people, it's not like you're just going to chat any random person to see if you get some feedback.
No, that's true.
But in that sense, you actually could move in and listen in on a conversation, and if it wasn't interesting, you could move away.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized something there, and that's you could move really fast. You could go from one end of the room to the other end of the room in just seconds. So if you are waiting for your turn to speak and you're like 4 people in a group and there's one of them you want to address, then that person might just leave in 2 seconds. So you might not be able to catch them as they turn away to walk away to another conversation. And of course you can find them again, but yeah.
But when you're having project meetings, now let's get to business. As I started up, we haven't actually seen each other for quite a while. And yet we're seeing each other every day. And it works. And we've been working together on 2 or 3 different projects since then.
Yeah.
And we managed to meet our deadlines so far. So that hasn't
it hasn't
been a problem.
No.
It hasn't slowed us down.
And actually it's almost easier to just share your desktop on these tools than to walk over and stand by the side of the other person to look at their desktop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you don't get any breaks anymore, you know, just sit, stay foot in front of that.
I wasn't thinking about that, but I was thinking about the convenience of both having the ability to access the same desktop.
It is actually rather good. I've also been working on a project with Torben Lund, and we're doing you know, pair programming, so to speak. We've done that too as well. It's usually when you're debugging, you know, and you look at the same screen.
Yeah.
And that's very, very useful, I think. And you don't actually have to sit on each other's lap to do that.
Exactly.
You can share the screen. And you're right, that is really useful for these kind of tools.
Yeah, and you can be more than 2 as well to look at the same screen.
Yeah, I haven't been in that situation yet. But yes, of course you could. Yeah. Okay, no, I haven't been in a situation where I've been discussing code with more than one person at a time. No, I think all in all, we have a new way of cooperating, but we had to learn it the hard way.
Yeah, we had to be forced into it to see the benefits.
Yeah.
So the question now is, how will we continue using these tools in the future when the lockdown is removed and we get the chance to meet in the office again? Will we do more work from home using these tools, or will we go back to the way things were?
Not quite, I think. Not quite. But that's something to think about.
Yeah.
And I really can't just say this is what we're going to do, because I really don't know. Because there are still benefits with having an office.
Yeah. Or at least meeting up a few times a week, perhaps, in a physical location. That doesn't necessarily have to be an office, but it's good to have an office anyway. But yeah, I think it depends a little bit on what kind of projects we're working on and what kind of situations we are in. Because if you work from home, you can be more undisturbed to focus on work. Which is both good and bad, because then all the spontaneous discussions that might show up in an office might be too low. So we might have to have at least a few days where we see each other to have those more spontaneous conversations.
Also, especially in your case, you know, you save a whole lot of hours in transport time.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be around 2 hours for you every day.
Yeah. I've got 2 hours more every day. So yeah, I've had more time to do things, both work and not work. So that has been good.
Yeah, well, if you want to start working at 9 o'clock in the morning, you know, then it will take me about, all in all, you know, 40 minutes. So I have to think about leaving home about 20 minutes past 8.
Yeah.
Now I start working 9 o'clock sharp.
Yeah.
There's no time, you know, before or after.
Just out of bed, put some coffee on, put some clothes on, and then you start working. Yeah.
And actually, the thing that normally, I mean, when you go to work, when you are at the office, you are at work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of what defines being at work. Right now, I have this slightly different, well, actually quite different definition, is that until 9 o'clock, I'm allowed not to pick up the phone should anyone call.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not working before 9, so I can enjoy my coffee.
Yeah, that's a good policy, I think. But I think it's lunchtime.
So isn't it? Yeah.
We should probably have a break now. And
okay.
Let's call it a video.
Let's call it a video. Yes. See you guys. Bye.
See you. Bye.